guys, welcome back to my channel and happy Monday. It's finally September, which is why I'm wearing a leather jacket, trying to channel the fall vibes. It's still in the 90s here in Houston, but we're rolling with it. As you can tell from this setting and also my mug, which is normally my tea mug, and there's still tea in here as you can see from this, but I felt like with the jacket, this mug was more appropriate, a little bit more edgy. No, yes, no. So you can probably tell from the setting, from the mug, that we are doing another tea time video today. Before we get into it, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all of the amazing comments and positive feedback on my last tea time video, which is actually my very first tea time video. I will link it up in the cards. I'm still not sure which side it goes on. And that tea time was on the topic of, why we're not going for it, why we're not going after our dreams, and talking about a lot of the fears that tend to get in the way when we're going after what we really want in life. And in that video, I mentioned that I am actually a recovering perfectionist. And as I was reading through the comments, I realized that a lot of you have that same type of quality or that same type of trait, and you wanted me to make a tea time video on that. And so that is what we're going to be talking about today. The recovering perfectionist, hear ye, gather round, because we're gonna dive on into this. Such a dork. Okay, so what is perfectionism? I'm just kidding. I think we all know what perfectionism is. Essentially, we have an idea or an expectation for how something should be, how we should be, our lives should be, our family members, relationships, the work that we do. We have this vision in our heads, and a lot of the time we've built up expectations around it, and it's this really ideal, perfect type of life, right? Well, let me tell you, I've been living on this earth for 30 years, and perfect doesn't exist. Oh man, this is gonna be a real fun tea time. Okay, so let's go back to my younger years, 6 to 10-year-old Kristen. I didn't know that the concept of perfect even existed. I think a lot of us as children don't know that there is such a concept because we're too young, and we're exploring, we're discovering, and we're expressing ourselves without thinking about potential consequences, because we don't know that other people's opinions of us even matter. We don't even take them into consideration. So when I was a kid, I was creating content like crazy. And it's funny to say that as a child I was creating content, but I really was. I didn't know that's what I was doing until, fast forward 30 years later, and here I am. I was folding together printer paper and stapling it along the sides and writing my stories and illustrating, even though I cannot draw. I cannot draw for the life of me. I can sense that you don't believe me, so here's one of the books that I wrote. The Stone Wall. Let's find an illustration, shall we? First of all, what? Yeah, no concept of dimension or, this poor girl. So yes, I was writing books. I also carried around my dad's clunky video camera, and I would record anything and everything. I used to record plays with my American Girl dolls and modeling shows, and I would sit down and I would press record on the camcorder, because that's what it was called, and I would give fake news segments about the happenings in our neighborhood. Because so much is going on when you're a kid in your neighborhood. So I was creating content, and I did not care what anyone else thought about it. I actually would enlist people to help me, like my mom to help me write my books, my sisters and my cousins to help me put together these plays and these shows. I enlisted people to help me do these things because I didn't care. I didn't know there was such a concept as perfect. I just did it because it's what I wanted to do, and I had fun doing it, and it's something that I wanted to create. And honestly, I didn't care what anyone else thought about what I was doing, because the only opinion that mattered to me as a kid was my own. I was having fun, I liked what I was doing, I thought it was way cool, and that's all that mattered. So why is it that when we grow up, we lose that? Why do we suddenly start caring so much? And I'll tell you why. It's because the concept of perfect and expectations are introduced to us as we get older, as we kind of head into our teenage years, our pre-adolescent years, we have more responsibilities that are placed upon us. We start to grow up a little bit. And with that comes expectations from people like your parents, your grandparents, your teachers, your peers. And we suddenly start to feel less than, like we're not measuring up, and that we need to do more, be more. We need to strive for perfect. We need to do the best that we possibly can, which a lot of us as teenagers equate that to being perfect and not messing up. So in middle school and high school, I was the teenager who was very involved in everything. Every kind of activity you could possibly think of, from National Honor Society to the dance team, to the cheer team, to track, soccer, AP courses. I mean, you name it, I was a part of it. And a lot of it was because I was striving for this version of myself that I had envisioned would be perfect. I thought if I do all these things and I check all of these boxes, then I will be the perfect version of myself, and I will be doing all of the things that perfect me would do. But perfect doesn't exist, and it's not possible to achieve perfect. And even if it were possible, it wouldn't even matter, because your definition of perfect is going to be completely different from another person's definition of perfect. So even if you were perfect, someone is still going to criticize you because you're not measuring up to their expectations and their standards. They're still not going to like you or the work you put out there because their definition is different from yours. So who are you trying to impress? It can be hard sometimes, because I know for me, I am my own worst critic. So I'm really, really hard on myself, or I used to be really, really hard on myself when I would mess up or find failure in what I'm doing. And if you watch the last tea time, then you know that I've started asking the question now, am I failing enough? Because if you're not failing enough, that means you're not learning, you're not growing, and you're not evolving. But I totally get being your own worst critic and wanting everything to be the best that it possibly can, and to put your best foot forward, put your best work out there, and you should strive to do that. But when you start thinking of it as in this bubble of perfect, you're thinking of it in a bubble of impossible. If something's impossible, then it's not achievable, which means you will never achieve whatever it is you want. And that's where a lot of us get really hung up, is we have this idea of what we want our book to read like or to sound like. We have this idea in our heads of what we want to look like, how we want to portray ourselves and put ourselves out into the world. And when reality doesn't match up with expectation, then we're disappointed. Striving for perfectionism can also stifle your creativity and your success, because you're striving for something that isn't attainable. So if it's not attainable, you're never going to get it done. If you want to write the perfect book, it's never going to get written. So the number one thing I've learned as a recovering perfectionist is that I have to be okay, actually more than okay, thrilled with good enough. And the question I ask myself is this good enough for me? Am I proud of what I'm putting out there? I mean, if I had waited until everything was perfect in my eyes, none of this would be happening. You would not be watching this video right now, because my YouTube channel wouldn't have been launched. My podcast certainly wouldn't have been launched. My 5 books would never have been written or published, and I would not be sitting here in front of you today. If I had waited for perfect, which doesn't exist anyways, this wouldn't be my life right now. The biggest piece of advice I can give when it comes to recovering from perfectionism is that only you have to stand behind what you're doing. Only you need to be proud of it. Your opinion of yourself and what you're doing is the only one that matters. And that's exactly why I continue to create content, to make these YouTube videos, to write my books. I mean, if I stopped at every dislike on a video that I got, or every negative book review, if I sat there and thought to myself, oh, like maybe I should stop, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for who? I don't even know these people. Again, who am I trying to impress? Try to impress yourself. If you impress yourself and you stand behind what you're doing, that's all that matters. Additionally, if you are a recovering perfectionist, I would also encourage you to stop finding the fault in things. Look for the good instead. If you have to, write down all the good that you're doing, all the good that you've done, all the great stuff you've done with your book or along your author journey, or whatever it is you're struggling with. Write down the good. Write down the things that you have accomplished and the things that you're proud of. Because what you look for, you will find, and what you focus on will expand. So if you're constantly looking for the fault and finding fault in things, that's what's going to expand. You're only going to find more fault and more things wrong. But if you focus on the good and you look for the good in your work, in your book, in that scene you just wrote, you'll gain that sense of pride and accomplishment, and you'll keep going. You'll push past that concept that you may have had in your head for a really long time. So to recap, number one is the only opinion that truly matters when it comes to you and what you're doing is your own. Number two is that the next time you start doubting yourself or striving for that impossible version of perfect, remember that that's your version of perfect and most likely it's no one else's. So who exactly are you trying to impress? You only need to impress yourself. And number three is to stop finding fault in the things that you're doing, but look for the good instead, because what you focus on will expand and what you look for is what you will find. From one recovering perfectionist to another, I can tell you that it is possible, and I can say it's possible because I've launched a plethora of courses and books over the past few years that never would have been launched had I still been striving for my own version and my own concept of perfect. So that is all I have for you guys today for this tea time. I really hope you got something out of it. I hope that it inspires you to really think about perfectionism, and the next time you're being really hard on yourself and the work that you're doing, to really just take a step back and just ask yourself, am I happy with this? Do I feel like I'm doing a good job? Am I working hard? Am I giving it my all? And if you can answer yes to all of those questions, and if you feel good about what you're doing and what you're working on, then it is good enough. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up to support my channel and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this video, if you like this topic, and if you have ideas for other topics during my tea times, please leave those down below because I want to make sure I'm addressing topics that you guys want to hear about. Don't forget to check out both of my websites, KristenMartinBooks.com and ThatSmartHustle.com, to get more information on me, my courses, my books, and everything else I've got going on. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!